chapter 2. James chapter 2. It's a good thing to get up in the morning and have prayer and the word on our minds. It's really good. Chapter 2 of James, beginning with verse 17. Even so, faith, if it, that is faith, if it hath not works, is dead, being alone. Or one definition for the word alone is, or dead is being alone, or being by itself. Now, that let us know. Do we have better mics than this? Actually, we can have faith, and it does us no good. No good. Just like the Israelites, they heard the word, but they didn't mix the word with faith. You can have the word and don't even have faith. You can have faith, and it does us no good. You would think if we had faith, everything would be just right. All right. Amen. It's better. All right. Okay. I just read it again. It says, even so, faith. We got to really look at that. If you walked up to a brother or sister and said, you don't have any faith, they'll be offended. So let's not say you just don't have any faith, because they could have faith, but it's not doing them any good, because faith is alone, all by itself. Faith need a partner. When we check the the narrative in the New Testament from the Gospels right on through, people had to people had to do what James says we must do. He says in verse 18, yea, a man may say. Is that me? All right. That means this is an important message, right? A man may say, thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works. I will show thee my faith by my works. Now, we understand the interpretation of this is to be um, applied to a horizontal relationship between people. Now, we can say a whole lot of things about having faith to one another, but if we don't do something to prove it,
we may as well keep it to ourselves. It's just an aggravation to tell somebody you got faith and you're not proving it. But it goes on to say, thou believest that there is one God, thou doest well. The devils also believe and tremble. Now that's an indictment, saints. That's not an encouragement, that's an indictment. And the indictment says, just to say you believe put us on the level of demons. Just to say we believe, we're no better off than demons. Because demons believe. You speak the name Jesus with some authority, you find out they believe. So it's not enough to say we believe. It's not enough just to have faith in our hearts. Because that faith in the heart need a partner to activate it. You know what the partner of the heart is to activate that faith? The mouth. So if we believe in our heart that God raised Christ from the dead, we need to confess that. Initially, confess it in order to have the experience of deliverance. We can believe in our heart and have right standing before God, but who would know it? Horizontally, who would know that a person believed God? You know, out in the world, they say faith is a private matter. You should keep it to yourself. Well, yeah, you can do that as long as you're not in a public office representing somebody. But if you're representing somebody, you better put your faith on the line. Otherwise, we're going to misrepresent those that voted and empowered us to be in representative government. And we're representing Christ. We're saying he's living inside of us. We're born again. We have to prove to others that he's living in us. Glory to God. So James is saying all of this, you believe God and you got faith and all of this good stuff between you and the Lord. Okay, all right already. Okay, now it's time to do something about it or to prove it or to get the benefit of it. If not for you, for somebody else. Because he really goes on to say, in no uncertain terms, that if a person, even before this, the prior verses, he says, now if a person is hungry and destitute and all this kind of stuff, and you say, go and be warmed and filled, what kind of faith is that? What kind of faith is that? Not doing anybody any good. So he's saying faith, yeah, we may have it in our hearts, but if that's where it is and it stays there and it's not activated, it's not doing anybody any good. Starting with the person that faith is in that heart. So let's get off of this level with evil spirits. Evil spirits come to services like this just like we come. Verse 20 says, but wilt thou know, O vain man? Isn't that something? A person that has faith unactivated is a vain person. Mean empty. Without substance. I try to help people not to complain too much about people who sit around and just talk it and don't do anything about it. I said, don't talk about them too bad, because to it takes one to know one. You understand what I mean? It takes one to know one. Always come short of being too critical, because we wouldn't know sin if it were not for the law. We wouldn't know what was wrong if we had not been wrong. That's the only way to know wrong, is to be wrong. That's what Satan duped Eve with. He knows the day you eat that, your eyes are going to be open, and you're going to be like a god. He's holding out on you. You'll know good and evil just like he does. But at any rate, we got to activate our faith. Not sit around and have a ton of it in our hearts. And be ready to defend the offense when someone accuses us of not having it because they hadn't seen anything to prove it lately. Let's not be offended. Let's get off the fence, so to speak, and let's activate that faith so somebody can see it and say, that person has faith. I hear what they're saying, and I see what they're doing. No more vanity. But he says, but wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead? Was not Abraham our father justified by works? Now that's a contradiction seemingly to what Paul says. What have our father Abraham found according to the flesh? He says he didn't find righteousness by works. He found righteousness by faith. But here James come along and says, was not Abraham our father justified by works when he had offered Isaac his son upon the altar? Well, there's one justification before God. There's another justification before man. Now, we can have faith in our heart and believe the report of the Lord in our hearts before God, so we have right standing before him, but we don't have right standing before one another. What God was bringing out of Abraham at the age of 115, not in his 80s, not in his 90s. He was bringing out a horizontal expression of that faith that had been developed in him before God all those years. His faith was developing when God told him to come out of the Ur of the Chaldees, the land of Mesopotamia, the land of his nativity. He said, I want you to get out of there. I want you to leave your father's house and go to a place that I'll show you as you go. And we know back in Genesis, Terah led them forth. So that means he didn't leave his father's house. His father's house came with him. And came to Haran, and for years there until Terah died. Terah, his father's name, means delay. But yet development of faith was going on, just like development of faith is going on in our experience. But so far, we're still having to cut some ties and cut loose some things concerning the flesh. And so our faith is not to the level that we could be called the friend of God. You know, God's friends, God takes care of his friends. He takes care of his friends. We sing that song, I'm a friend of God, but we sing it because if we don't sing it, then people think we're not friends of God. Not God's friends. Oh, no. It takes something to be a friend of God. It takes faith act as level to be a friend of God. So Abraham was justified when he offered Isaac up, which means that Abraham was talking the talk and walking the walk, but he had to walk it all the way out to the final conclusion of the matter when he said to those people, y'all stay here, son and I, we're going to that yonder mountain, and we're going to worship, and we're coming back. So he was talking, yeah, I believe God, I believe God, I believe God, I believe, yes, I believe God. All of the antics that go with it. All of the yes lords. All of the crocodile tears. But they had to go up to the mountain with the torch, with the wood, build the altar, lay the wood on the altar. And then Abraham had to be asked by his son Isaac, I see the wood, we have the fire, here's the altar, but we didn't bring a lamb. Now, if we're going to really have faith to please God, if we're really going to put it on the line, then it's going to be proven in our action. Our action, saints. That means here's a 15-year-old boy. You know, by the time a boy is 15 years old, he might have a little tricep. And his father's 115, but his father tied him up. He tied his son up. He picked him up and put him on the altar. He put his son tied up on the wood. Now, a lot of times we don't understand that God brings us periodically to a point that we can exercise faith that will please him to take us to a whole nother level. And we faint over the conversation. We faint over the sacrifice. Now, we talk the good talk down in the valley. But now that we're on the mountain of sacrifice, and it's time to put up or shut up, people fall out. And I'm not accusing people of not having faith. I'm just saying it ain't doing nobody any good. It's not doing any good. Oh, it looks like it because you made it to the top of the mountain. It looks like it because you have the fire and the wood and you built the altar. It looks like it. But we're not there yet. Until you bind the sacrifice. When you bind the sacrifice, he was not binding a lamb at the time. He was binding his son. The best that he had. The promise of God. What the Lord had blessed him with. And until we take the best thing that God ever gave us and give it up, we just talk. We just talk. And I know the mind play games and the heart is deceitful, and we'll try to manipulate our way out of the reality of what is best. What is really best, we say, oh, that ain't the best. It is the best. And then sometimes we say, that's the best, and that's not the best. What is the best thing you have that God gave you? Not what you got. Because whatever you went and got, it ain't the best. No, you got that on your own. What did God give you? Do you not know? Let me make it very plain. There are a few people that God gave beauty to. And they have never given it up. It wasn't until God took it from them. They went into a spiral. And they looked like a mummy walking down the street. Because God gave them beauty. And you look in the scriptures, get this, God gave Esther beauty. Gave her beauty, natural beauty. That woman was so beautiful. She was more beautiful than all the women in the realm of the kingdom that was stretched so far. The king never went to all of it. And you know what? She had to give it up. Mordecai said, if you hold your peace, if you don't get into it, if you don't act, if you don't lay it down, you're going to lose. Your father's house is going to lose. And God's going to raise up somebody else to do your job. Deliverance will come from another place because we're going to be delivered. You know, I was thinking about that. Mother Smith, I was thinking about that. And I don't want to get anybody in any trouble, but I'm just using this as an example because I was thinking about it. Pastor Agnew, what year were you born? 1982. Okay. So I was thinking, I didn't know that when we started the ministry in our garage in 81, he had a 1-year-old boy that he was preparing to assist me. I didn't know that. He was 1 year, he's a 1-year-old boy. He was younger than Atai. Atai is what? 3. But a 1-year-old boy, he was working on to raise up to assist me. You were born in 81, 82. Born in 82. Yeah, I thought about it. Now, there were a whole lot of folks assisting me between 81 and 6 years ago. Only a few around. But if I didn't have works, regardless of who come and goes, that one that he had in the thickets, prepared as a ram in the bush, if I didn't get up to the mountain, if I wasn't willing to give up the best, you say, what was the best? I have a junior named after me, which is a preacher of the gospel that I won to Christ when he was 8 on the street, witnessing, preaching. Laid hands on him, filled with the Holy Ghost, speaking in tongues, if you please. I had to give him up. Literally in heart and in action. I had to give him up as if he was dead. In order to really accept the sacrifice that God had already prepared. Didn't know he was up there. Didn't know he was in the thickets, a ram in the bush. But I would have never known if I wasn't willing to give up the best. Give up out of my loins. Give up my name. Give up everything. And I can assure you, I gave it up. So if he showed up, he would not have precedence over anybody. Nobody. So, what have you given up? What was the best that God gave you? What are you holding on to that keeps us from becoming God's friend and activating the faith that somebody else can be blessed by? I tell you what, whatever the best is, I encourage you to ask God for the grace to give it up. And it has to be in your heart that you do. And then act like it. And you'll find that God will raise up and increase you. That which you gave up, he'll give it back to you 100-fold. You're not losing anything. You're gaining. I wouldn't doubt if Junior's listening to this message right now. He listens online. The Morning Manna. Hey, no, he'll be among the many sons. Because that's what the Lord promised. Whatever you give up, he'll give you 100-fold those that you gave up. I mean, just yesterday, I'm riding down the street, and sons blowing at me in their cars. I didn't even know they were yet in town. Antoine Scruggs blowing his horn, sitting in there and his wife driving. He said, "Hey, Pop, I'm leaving town today," and we were just riding. I said, "Hey, don't forget me when you come into your kingdom, you know." Then another son, I'm driving down University, and he's blowing, and I looked over. Oh, that's a long-lost son. And he's just waving, and you know, and you get to thinking about what's going on here. One called yesterday, the day before. He said, "I'm just calling to report in to get better connected." Of course, I hear from him because he sends a check every month. Another son, my wife, I guess it was Sunday, she said, "Well, or Monday, yesterday, when did you give me that check?" Yesterday. You've been carrying a check in your purse for a few days. You forgot you had it. That she got from one of my sons. That's why I say, don't ever think Mother Smith don't have any money. She always has money. Even if it belongs to somebody else, she always has it. From son. So faith, if it hath not works, is dead, being alone. If you say you have faith and no works, how is it going to help anybody? And now the Lord wants to take us to the realm of possibilities. Give it up. Give it up. Most people may not even know you gave it up. But you know. God knows. And when you know the story, he was about to come down with that knife. He had it up, I believe he was ready to come down. And the angel of the Lord said, "Don't do it. Don't do it." And the New Testament says he received his son in the figure again from the dead. As far as God is concerned, his son was dead. He was as good as dead. And the Lord says, "Now I know." Not because of what you said, but what you did. Now I know. And because of what I now know, and in multiplying, I'm going to multiply you. Increasing, I'm going to increase you. If we get this, this, saints, we need to get in the position of being increased by God. So it doesn't matter what goes on in the world, no matter what the economy does, it can dip in the tank, it can flop, people can be standing in long lines, soup lines. But we'll be able to say like David, I was once young, but now I'm old. Yet I've never seen the righteous forsaken, neither is seed begging bread. Isn't that wonderful? That's a guarantee. That's how we really believe God on a big scale. Just act like it. Just act like it. Just don't go out there and do anything. What God says, do it. If you're not sure he said it, get some help to find out if that's the Lord speaking. If that's the Lord speaking, let's do it. Hallelujah. So, you didn't know it, but I was preaching to myself because there's some things I need to just simply do. And I had to hear myself say it because I didn't know if anybody else would say it to me if you were up here. You might have, but you might have been a little intimidated, telling me I need to give up my best and just get on with the program. Hallelujah. Any requests, anything?